What they found was that you get the same kind of reinforcing effects that heroin has in the shorter acting remifentanil, but only if they can self-administer more. If they can only press the same lever twice, and this one lasts for 30 seconds, and this one lasts for 5 seconds, this one's more reinforcing because you get longer, you enjoy it more. This one is reinforcing, but to a much lesser extent. Like this. Instead of this. Then they're just as likely to self-administer. So something that is faster is funner, but you need more of it. Finally, let's talk about some factors outside the drugs themselves that are incredibly influential on addiction and the addiction models in animals. The main one is stress. Piazza and Moll looked at a bunch of different studies and reviewed them, and this was the best one for me to show you guys because it's super inclusive of all the different stuff that's been going on in looking at, one, the different kind of drug-centered versus individual-centered research that's going on, and a lot of the information I gave at the beginning to understand what a drug addiction model looks like. These guys bring up the idea that there are 3 major areas of research right now in drug addiction. There's the acquisition, the retention, and the relapse. Any drug that is rewarding is dealing with your dopamine system. We've said it before, we'll say it again. So when we're looking at stress, I know what stress is for me, and you know what stress is for you, but how do we know what stress is for Mr. Mousy here? The trouble is we don't. So what we do is we put them into a situation that they would normally avoid. Tail pinches, or being hung, or having to swim around with no idea how to get out of the water and think they're going to die. Yes, this is probably a stressful event, but it's not stressful the same way that work was so stressful I had to listen to 3 ladies talk about themselves for 4 hours. No, instead it's an extreme stress, but since we're doing animal models, we're going to have to deal with that until we can figure out how to speak mouse and let them tell us what they really dislike. Maybe just watching Honey Boo Boo would be enough to stress them out. Or to make them write 4-hour take-home exams online. You know, just out of the top of my head. Now, some of these stress methods are more effective for certain types of drugs than others, which shows us that there is a difference in stress levels as well as types of stress. So starvation makes them want to use amphetamines and alcohol. A pain stimulus, like a foot shock, will increase the use of opiates, which are pain medications in hospitals anyway. So again, these are correlating to things that are already in use. And if you want to know more, read their study. Here's a chart. There are more studies talked about in this paper, and I highly suggest it's a good read. It takes an individual-centered view on drug addiction, and the idea that if you increase the stress in a person's life, and people don't have ways to adapt to stress or deal with stress, it's a great predictor of addiction. Our final study today is by Hanley and Spielman. And it wouldn't be my show if I didn't present to you with some research that said all my other research might be flawed. Science for you. Luckily, they don't have too much to say as far as why things are wrong. What they did was look at 3 different types of opiates and 3 different types of amphetamines. And these are going to be agonistic, partial agonistic, and antagonistic. These drugs are not recreational drugs. They're the drugs we use to treat drug addiction. And they looked at it across the 3 different types of research subjects. Rodents, which include rats and mice, non-human primates, and humans. What did they find? They found that across the subject range, that the drugs we're using are going to show the same effects as long as it's self-administered and dose-dependent. But what do they find? Basically, that these animal models are awesome. They're a great tool for understanding and learning more about the behavioral as well as biological aspects of drugs and drug addictions. Well, friends, we've learned a lot today about drugs and behavior, but now it's time for me and my friends to go and have herbal tea. See you next week when we dive into some fantastic research about my favorite animal, the cuttlefish. Bye. Juice.